Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to section 2, lesson 8. In section 2, we've been discussing diacritical marks, and today will likely be the last lesson of section 2. Now, we are at the end of the diacritical marks. The Shadda is going to be the last diacritical mark we're going to be discussing, but probably I'm going to include maybe one or two more lessons in this section. I'm not exactly sure yet. I will know in the upcoming weeks when I prepare those lessons, inshallah. But today we're going to talk about Shadda. So let's get started. On the agenda today, we're going to do a quick review of the previous lesson. After the review, we're going to go through I'm going to ask you to go through the warm-ups as usual, and I'm going to link them in the video. So please don't skip the warm-ups, do the warm-ups. Then as usual, we're going to go over and start to remember/memorize the letter collections and what letter collections we've memorized so far. And after that, we're going to go into today's lesson, which is going to be about the Shadda and the madd-ul-lazim. And finally, I'm going to give you a preview of the exercise videos that are going to be coming up, inshallah. And that'll take us to the end of today's lesson, today's video. Okay, so a quick review of the previous lesson. In section 2, lesson 7, we discussed all about the sukoon and what it means. And sukoon basically means to be at rest. And the diacritic, when placed on a letter, looks like a small dal. And on your right hand side, if I can find my mouse, right there is the diacritic, and what it looks like when it's placed on a letter. And whenever the sukoon is placed on a letter, the letter is called a sakin letter. So noon sakin, mim sakin, ba sakin, so on and so forth. Whenever a sukoon is placed on a letter, it denotes the end of the syllable. So it denotes the end of the syllable, and you should stop there and end your spelling and basically pronounce out the syllable at that point. Now, remember that in the previous lessons we discussed that every letter has a sound, a name, and you move that sound with one of the three harakat, the fatha, dhamma, or the kasra. And you can think about the fatha, dhamma, kasra as moving it up, moving it down, and moving it sideways. But when the sound of the letter is not moving, it's just at rest. That's when a sukoon is placed on it. So you don't move the sound. So basically a sukoon is the opposite of the harakat, meaning to move. Sukoon means to be at rest. So whenever you place the sukoon on top of a letter, that means the letter is at rest. So you're supposed to keep the sound of the letter at rest. And whenever the sukoon is added to a letter, it needs to be combined with a previous letter with a movement/short vowel on it. So a maftuha, madmuma, or maksura letter needs to be combined with a sakin letter in order to complete your syllable. So we will cover the details of noon sakin in a later video, inshallah. Ahkam and noon sakina wa tanween will be covered in a lot more detail, and what those rules are related to noon sakin, etc. I have given you a little quick previews, and we've been discussing ikhfa, idgham, etc. in our previous videos, but those details are going to come later, inshallah. A lot more detail when it comes to ahkam and noon sakina wa tanween. Alright, so some examples of sukoon. On the screen, you have some words that we did as examples of the sukoon last time, so I'm going to quickly go over these. I'm going to spell them out and I'm going to pronounce them out, but I'm going to do them quickly. If you want, you can go section 2, lesson 7, and all the exercises for a preview of or for details of this lesson. Hamza, fatha, ain, sukoon, a'. Ba, dhamma, bu. A'bu. Dal, dhamma, du. A'budu. Ya, dhamma, yu. Waw, fatha, sin, sukoon, was. Yuwas. Waw, kasra, wi. Yuwaswi. Sin, dhamma, su. Yuwaswisu. Fa, kasra, lam, sukoon, fil. Ain, dhamma, u. Fil'u. Qaf, fatha, qa. Fil'uqa. Dal, kasra, di. Fil'uqadi. Lam, fatha, mim, sukoon, lam. نون فتحة صاد سكون نص. را ضمة رو نصر. واو فتحة و. را فتحة را ورا. همزة فتحة يا سكون أي ورأي. تا فتحة تا ورأيت. That brings us to the end of the examples of sukoon. Okay. There are 5 letters for qalqalah, and this is a review of the concept of qalqalah. And if you remember, we've been memorizing the qalqalah letters. What were they? They were qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal, qutub, jad. And whenever these letters have a sukoon on them, you must do qalqalah or echo the sound. Now, what is meant by this echo? These letters, if they're not echoed, it becomes difficult to distinguish the letter sounds, is because the sound seems to stop. Especially because the articulation point closes, you can't tell, or it causes an annoyance with the sound of the letter because the articulation point seems to stop. And if you want, you can review details of what that means and how to do qalqalah, how not to do qalqalah in section 2, lesson 7 in the previous video. Now let's move on to some examples of qalqalah. The qalqalah letters were qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal. And these are some examples of the qalqalah. Ya, fatha, ya. Lam, kasra, dal, sukoon, lid. يلد. يا فتحة جيم سكون يج. عين فتحة لام سكون عل يجعل. همزة فتحة دال سكون أد. را فتحة ألف صغيرة را أدرا. كاف فتحة ك أدراك. كاف فتحة لام سكون كل. فا فتحة فا كلف. را فتحة ألف سكون را كالفرا. شين كسرة لام سكون شل كالفراشل. ميم فتحة با سكون ماب كالفراش الماب. ثا ضمة واو سكون ثو كالفراش المبثو. ثا كسرة ثي كالفراش المبثوث. تا فتحة جيم سكون تاج. را كسرة يا سكون ري تجري. And that takes us to the end of the examples of qalqalah. On to the warm-ups. Go ahead, watch the warm-up video. I will put a link to the warm-up video in the video annotation so you can look up the warm-up video. Don't skip. It's important, and especially we're going to be discussing one concept today in the warm-ups. I believe it's warm-up number 12, counting to 6 and saying ah. The warm-up of ah and counting to 6. Well, that warm-up is important for today's lesson. Go watch the warm-ups video. Don't skip. Okay, moving on. Letter collections. We've been discussing the different letter collections, and as we learn more and more letter collections, we've been adding to the letter collection list, and we've been memorizing them. And very soon we will be discussing more letters, and we will be adding to them to the letter collections as well. But so far we've memorized the throat letters, the lip letters, the tafkhim letters, the idgham letters, the madd letters, and the qalqalah letters. So, what are the throat letters? There are 6 throat letters, and if you remember what they were, can you memorize them and pronounce them from memory and recite them from memory? They are hamza ha, ayn ha, ghayn kha. They are hamza ha, ayn ha, ghayn kha. What about the lip letters? Meaning these 4 letters, their articulation point is particularly from the lips. And what are they? There are 4 of them. They are fa, waw, ba, and mim. Fa, waw, ba, and mim. Those are the four lip letters. Moving on. What are the tafkhim letters? These are letters that are always pronounced heavy. We will cover details of tafkhim later. A lot more detail of tafkhim and tarqiq, etc. later. But they are tafkhim letters that must be pronounced heavy, and their sound must reverberate throughout your oral cavity as if you're singing like an opera singer. Oh, that's called tafkhim. There are sad, bod, ba, wa, ghain, kha, and qaf. Those are the 8 letters. Sad, bod, ba, wa, ghain, kha, and qaf. I'm sorry, not 8. What am I saying? It's 7 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, 7 letters, not 8. Those are the tafkhim letters. Their characteristic is that they're always pronounced heavy. Next we have the idgham letters. The idgham letters can be remembered by the word. Do you remember the word? Yarmalun. Ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, noon. Yarmalun. These are the letters of idgham, and we will discuss this in detail when we go over ahkam an-nun sakina wa tanween. And finally, the mud letters are alif, waw, and ya. Those are the letter collection. Actually, you know what? That's true. Last time we added one more letter collection, which was the qalqalah letters. I totally forgot about this one. What were the 5 letters of qalqalah? They were qutb-jad, we just discussed it in the preview or review of the previous lesson. Qaf, ba, ba, jim, dal. These letters, their sound must be echoed whenever a sukoon is present on these letters. On to today's lesson, which is about the shadda. What is the shadda? The shadda is actually a W-looking diacritic that appears on top of a letter. And you see the shadda on the right-hand side on your screen. It looks like a fork or a W that you see on your screen right now. The circle denotes that it's above the letter. That's what the circle denotes. The word itself, the word shadda, it means emphasis or to place emphasis. And whenever a letter has a shadda on top of it, we call that letter mushaddad. Meaning that if a ba has a shadda on it, it's called ba mushaddad, mim mushaddad, noon mushaddad, so on and so forth. That means the letter has a shadda on it. Now what does a shadda denote? It denotes that whichever letter has the shadda on it, it actually is occurring twice. So if a ba has a shadda on it, it is occurring twice. When a noon has a shadda on it, it is occurring twice. When the meme has a shadda on it, the meme is occurring twice. And if you've been watching your exercise videos, the way that I did the shadda pronunciation in the previous exercise video was just like that. The letter was occurring twice. And I will show you what that means. But basically what happens with the shadda is once the letter is occurring with a sukoon on it, and once the letter is occurring with a vowel on top of it. But in shorthand, in Arabic, you write that letter once and you just add a shadda and the vowel / diacritical mark on top of the letter to let you know that this is a letter that is occurring twice. But unlike the sukoon, whenever a shadda occurs, you don't do qalqalah on one of the 5 qalqalah letters. Now what do I mean by that? On your screen, oh, by the way, just to let you know, on the second ba on this side on my screen, on this ba above it, this circle actually denotes a sukoon. This is another method of writing the sukoon. I just couldn't find the dal looking diacritic that you usually see in the Quran on my Arabic keyboard, so I wrote it with my keyboard, and that's why that is a circle. But that is not a sifr, that is another or sometimes it is a method of writing the sukoon. So this is ra fatha ba sukoon rab, ba kasra bi rabbi. Notice this is a ba sukoon, but we don't do qalqalah on this ba sukoon. We don't say rabbi. We don't say rabbi. We don't do qalqalah on this ba. We just say rabbi. Rabbi. But we don't say rabbi either. Ra fatha ba sukoon. Rabbi. No, we don't. It's Rabbi. Rabbi. Ra fatha ba sukoon. Rab. Ba kasra bi. Rabbi. This is equivalent to Ra fatha ba shadda Rab. Ba kasra bi. Rabbi. But in this case, this occurring sukoon, this ba sukoon, ba sakin, that is occurring in this shadda, we do not do qalqalah on this ba sukoon. So this is Ra fatha ba shadda Rab. Ba kasra bi. Rabbi. Okay? Rabbi. Rabbi. So that's a shadda. Alright, so some examples and a preview and some previews of some upcoming lessons. Now, the very first word with the shadda, and the most important perhaps word when shadda comes to shadda, it is also referred to as the lafz-ul-jalala, or the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the 99 beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is probably the most well-known name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Allah. That's what you see on your screen on the right hand side. This is Allah. But there are two particular or peculiar things about this letter. Actually three if you count the hamzatul-wasl, but we're not going to count the hamzatul-wasl. We already discussed hamzatul-wasl in some of the previous videos, but I just wanted to let you know that whenever a hamzatul wasl occurs with a lam, al is a definitive article, so the hamzatul wasl gets a fatha on top of it. So this is how we spell out lafzul jalala. Now, every subsequent time you're not going to need to spell out lafzul jalala, because this is such a prevalent word in the Quran, and this is such a prevalent name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, that once you have it, you won't need to spell it out over and over again. But I just wanted to give you two peculiar things about this word as it appears in the Quran. This is how it's written. Hamza fatha lam shadda al, lam fatha la, Allah, ha dhammahu, Allahu. Now, you probably are noticing the two peculiar things about this letter already. Number one, this lam, I don't say Allahu, forgive me my Pakistani brothers, but you make this mistake a lot, that you do not make the lam heavy, especially when the previous letter or when the word beginning is actually at the beginning of the verse. It's because hamza fatha lam shadda, or the letter previously right before it is a maftuha letter. The lafzul jalala needs to be made heavy. We will discuss this in detail in tafkhim and tarqiq. That's why it's examples and previews. We will discuss the details of this in tafkhim and tarqiq, and when the lam is heavy. But the second peculiar thing about lafzul jalala is that lafzul jalala has a fatha on top of it, but this lam fatha is actually pronounced as if it is a alif saghira. So you don't say Allahu. This is not, the word is not Allahu. The word is Allahu. Lam fatha la, Allah, Allahu, Allahu, Allahu. Those are two peculiar things about lafzul jalala. I just wanted to give you this preview of lafzul jalala. When we discuss this in detail, and a lot more detail, when we get into tafkhim and tarqiq, inshallah. So this is how you pronounce this out and spell it out. Hamza fatha lam shadda al, lam fatha la, Allah, ha dhammahu, Allahu, 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 Allahu. There are two lams here. Allahu. Okay. Next we have fa fatha fa, صاد فتحة لام شدة صل فصل لام كسرة لي فصلي شين فتحة شا. Actually, no. Because of this shadda, we have to combine the sheen fatha with the ra shadda. So this is how it's pronounced, spelled. Sheen fatha ra shadda shar. Ra kasrari. Sharri. Sharri. Now, we will go into detail why this ra is light and not heavy in Tafkhim and Tarqiq lesson, inshallah, in a future video. تا فتحة با شدة تب با فتحة با تب. Now, this is another another word upon which I wanted to give you a preview of a future lesson. In a future lesson, we will be discussing all the rules as relates to whenever a verse is ending and how you are supposed to end a verse. We haven't discussed any of those rules yet. Now, whenever a verse is ending and whenever you're stopping / breaking your breath, there are multiple rules and how the verse should end and how the diacritics should be pronounced. This is an example of a word in which, you remember, we just said that a shadda letter is actually occurring twice, once with a sukoon and once with the fatha, right? Or once with a haraka letter, ba sukoon and ba fatha. So we pronounce it like this: da fatha ba shadda tab, ba fatha ba tab. Now, when this word occurs at the end of a verse, or when a mushaddad letter occurs at the end of a verse, the second instance of that word has to be, you need to do qalqalah on it. Now, we will go into details of this one. I don't want you to know this. This is not going to be on the self-test, but I just wanted to give you a preview. We will go into the details in a future lesson, inshallah. This is tabba. So the way you would pronounce this, the way you would spell this out, is ta fatha ba shadda tab, ba fatha ba tabba. Okay, moving on. Ha fatha mim shadda ham, mim fatha alif sukoon ma, hamma. Hamza kasra noon shadda in, noon fathana, inna. Ha dhamma wa saghirahu, innahu. Now, these are also two words for which I wanted to give you a quick preview of an additional lesson we will do in the future. What the lesson is going to be about the ghunna. Now, ghunna stands for nasalization, or adding nasal sound. This word is hamma, hamma, hamma. Now, hammalatal hatab. Now, this word hamma, notice I'm holding the meme sound in my nose a little bit before moving on. This is another reason I ask you to do your exercises or your warm-ups every time. The reason is that there is a warm-up in there in which I emphasize the ghunna. Inna, imma, and anna, amma. Those are warm-ups. Those are included in the warm-ups, so that you start getting used to holding sound in your nose and actually properly pronouncing the ghunna. This is one example of the ghunna, and the other example is with the noon shadda. Mim shadda and noon shadda both cause ghunna to occur. This is innahu. Notice I held the sound of the noon shadda in my nose a little bit. Innahu. Hamza kasra noon shadda in, noon fathana, إن ها ضم واو صغيره إنه. So these two words will also give you a quick preview of one of the future lessons in which we will be discussing the ghunna, inshallah. So these are some examples of the shadda occurring in the Quran. Don't worry, we will be doing almost, I'm going to say, if I count it correctly, maybe 10 or even perhaps 12 exercise videos all dedicated to the shadda. So if you don't get this concept yet, don't worry. Plenty more videos to come. Plenty more. More examples. يا فتحة يا حا ضم ضاد شدة حب يا حب ضاد ضم ض يا حب. We just did this one. I believe I accidentally put this one twice. Innahu. We already did this one, so we're gonna skip this one. This example we did in one of our previous videos, and this is a noon sakin immediately followed by a ra, which is one of the cases of what? If you remember that we did a quick preview, we haven't discussed this in detail. It's an example of idgham, because noon sakin is immediately followed by a ra. We will go into details later, inshallah. This is how this one is pronounced and spelled. Ain fatha ra shadda ar. Ra fatha ba shadda rab. Arrab. Ba kasra bi. Arrabbi. Ha kasra mim sukoon him. Arrabbihim. Notice I add a little bit of the vibration on the ra because there are two ra's here. So it's ar-rabbihim. Notice my tongue vibrated slightly more than usual when I'm pronouncing this ra because of the presence of the shadda. There are two ra's here that I must pronounce them both. Ar-rabbihim. Okay? This is another example of idgham. And this is how this one is pronounced. Mim kasra noon shadda min. Noon kasra ain sukoon ni'. Min ni'. Mim fatha ma. Min ni'ma. Ta kasra tantin. Min ni'matin. Min ni'matin. Now, this is one we discussed just a second ago. Noon shadda. I held the noon sound in my nose a little bit. That's a preview of, not idgham, sorry. That's a preview of ghunna. But this is also an example of idgham as well as ghunna. Now, this word, Ar-Rahman, is another name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is a preview of a concept that I will probably be discussing in the next video, which is going to be about the sun letters and the moon letters. If you don't know what that means yet, don't worry. This is another preview. Notice something peculiar about this word. This is a lam and this is a ra. But notice this lam has no diacritic on it. The diacritic is actually there. There is a sukoon. There's supposed to be a sukoon on it, but it's not written. And this ra shadda is supposed to be connected directly with this hamzatul-wasl. And because this is a definitive article, hamza and then lam, al, hamzatul-wasl is pronounced with the fatha. Always with the fatha because of the presence of this lam. We will discuss this concept, hamzatul wasl, why this lam does not have a sukoon on it, and how whenever it's a definitive article, al, in the next video, I believe it's going to be the next video, on sun letters and moon letters. But I just wanted to give you this quick preview of this one. This is how you pronounce this. Hamza fatha ra shadda ar. Ra fatha ha sukoon rah. Ar-rah. Mim fatha alif saghira ma. Ar-rahma. Nun dhammanu. Ar-rahmanu. Moving on. Another example of hamzatul-wasl occurring right before a lam, and there is a lam sukoon there because there's a shadda on the lam. There's a sukoon and a maftuha lam, but this shadda is denoting that lam is occurring twice, once with a sukoon and once with a fatha. And this is how you spell this one out. Whenever hamzatul wasl occurs right before a lam, it tells you that this is a definitive article and it's hamza fatha. This hamzatul wasl has an implied fatha on it. This is how you spell this out. Hamza fatha lam shadda al. Lam fatha la. Al. Dhal kasra ya sukoon dhi. Alladhi. Okay, that gave you some examples and some previews of some of the next lessons and example of obviously the shadda, but the shadda has a lot of concepts associated with it. Okay, moving on to madd-ul-lazim. What is the meaning of madd-ul-lazim? And the reason I put this in the Shadda lesson, I did not dedicate a separate lesson to it, is because it's very closely related to a Shadda. Now, there's other types of madd-ul-lazim that we will discuss in a lot more detail, not just one that occurs because of a Shadda, but there are other madd-ul-lazim that other examples of madd-ul-lazim, other cases that occurs not because of a shadda. But today we're going to talk about a particular type that occurs because of a shadda. We will go into details of that later, but today we're going to talk about this one case. Madd-ul-lazim means mandatory elongation, and the madd-ul-lazim, this specific case of madd. Now, if you remember from the madd lesson, madd means to elongate. The specific case of elongation occurs whenever a shadda is followed by, actually this is written correctly, I will correct this in my when I revise this PowerPoint. When a shadda immediately follows, not is immediately followed by, but immediately follows one of the huroof-ul-madd. In section 2 lesson 4 we discussed the 3 huroof-ul-madd. What were they? If you want, you can watch section 2 lesson 4. They were whenever a maftuha letter is followed by an alif, whenever a maksura letter is followed by a ya, and whenever a madmuma letter is followed by a waw. Those were the 3 cases of madd. Whenever those 3 cases are followed immediately by, or the next lesson or the next word after it is immediately following the word, the next word has a shadda on it, that's when a madd-ul-lazim occurs. And this madd-ul-lazim, again, just like the madd-idafi that we discussed in section 2 lesson 6, we covered some details of that madd in section 2 lesson 6. We will go into a lot more details of it later, but we did discuss some details of it in section 2 lesson 6. And that this madd-ul-lazim is denoted by a tilda looking diacritic, a squiggly tilda looking diacritic. And this madd is the longest madd in the Quran, and it must be extended to 6 counts. This is why we do our warm-ups. In warm-up number 12, I ask you to say ah and hold that count to 6. Basically count to 6, or add 6 counts to the madd or the extension and say ah until counting to 6. Warm up number 12. This will help you pronounce madd-ul-lazim. Now this is one of the types of mad. There's a lot more. Madd-ul-lazim has 6 cases. We're not going to go all those 6 cases and the different types of them that occur, etc. in the Quran. Today we're going to go over them in a future video. Now I'm going to do an entire series of videos on ahkam al-madud. The rules related to elongation in a future series of videos. But today I just wanted to give you this one case of madd-ul-lazim. Some examples of madd-ul-lazim. Now the very first case that you see on your screen is an example of madd-ul-lazim, but you might be saying, wait. You might be crying foul. Why? Because even though this hamza fatha and then there's an alif, so there's a maftuha letter followed immediately by an alif. This is a mad. But the next letter is not a shadda letter. This is an exception. We will go into details of this when we cover madd-ul-lazim and ahkam al-madud. Why this is an exception to the rule. But rest assured, this is the only word in the Quran that has this exception, and it only occurs twice in the whole Quran. So I will pronounce this for you, and we did pronounce this in the previous lesson of Qaida Nuraniyya. Qaida Nuraniyya, I believe it was lesson 11 if I'm not mistaken. We did pronounce this word out, but I just wanted to let you know that even though this hamza, fatha, alif is not immediately followed by a shadda letter, a mushaddad letter, this is still an example of madd-ul-lazim, and this is how you spell this out. Hamza, fatha, alif, mad, lam, sukoon, al. Notice I held that syllable to 6 counts. Al. Hamza, fatha, alif, saghira, a. Al. Noon, fathana. Al-ana. Okay, this is an example of a madd-ul-lazim. We will discuss this in a lot more detail in a future video. Next we have, if you have Surah Al-Fatiha memorized, you will recognize this. One of the words from Surah Al-Fatiha that has madd-ul-lazim. And this is ad-dallina. This is how you spell this out. Hamza, fatha, dad, shadda, ab. Dad, fatha, alif, mad, lam, shadda, dal. Ad-dal. Lam, kasra, ya, sukoon, li. Ad-dallin. Noon, fathana. Ad-dallina. Now because of this lam mushaddad, this mad must be extended to 6 counts. Longest mad in the Quran. Ad-dallina. Next we have another example. This alif mad is extended to 6 counts because of this lam shadda. This is how you spell this and pronounce this. Dad, fatha, alif, mad, lam, shadda, dal. Lam, fathatan, lan. Dallan. Next we have تا فتحة تا. حا فتحة ألف مد ضاد شدة حاض. تحاض. ضاد ضمة واو سكون ضو. تحاض. نون فتحانة تحاضون. This alif mad, this alif saghira with a mad on it, so we say alif mad is extended to 6 counts because of the presence of this madd shadda. This is an example of madd-ul-lazim. Next we have Hamza fatha ta shadda out. Ta fatha alif mad mim shadda tam. At-tam. Mim fatha ma. At-tam. Ta dhammatu. At-tammatu. Notice how lengthy I'm making this. Ta, fatha, alif, mad, mim, shadda, tam. 6 counts. 6 counts. Now, remember, it is the shadda that is after the mad that causes the mad to be extended to 6 counts. Not the one before, but after. So you have, so for example, in this word right here, this shadda is the one that causes this alif mad to be extended to 6 counts because of madd shadda. There is no shadda on the ha, meaning that the letter immediately following the alif mad, if it has a shadda, then the alif mad should be extended to 6 counts, which is called madd-ul-lazim. And final example is Hamza fatha slad shadda als. Slad fatha alif mad kha shadda صاخ. الصاخ. خا فتحة خا. الصاخة. تا ضمة. الصاخة. 6 counts. Each of these 6 counts. If you want, you can rewind. Now this is a toughie for beginners. It is actually takes a lot of practice and miles of patience to actually get this right. You become frustrated and you're like, how, wow, I'm about to lose my breath, I can't do this. No, this is why we do our warm-ups again and again and again, and we will do almost, I'm gonna say, I haven't had a chance to create like 8 or 9 exercise videos related to Shadda, and we're going to do a lot of exercises for madd-ul-lazim in those. So don't worry, it'll take time, but you will get it. I promise you, you will get it. I had a lot of trouble, but I finally got it. You can too. 6 counts, and these are all examples of madd-ul-lazim. Okay, for the exercises, inshallah, we're going to do Qaida Nuraniya, lesson 12, 13, 14, and 15. Meaning there is going to be lots of exercise videos following this one. And the reason is, this is another critical juncture. Sukoon was a critical juncture, but Shadda is also another critical juncture. In the sense that This is pretty much the last diacritic in the Qaida Nuraniya, before Qaida Nuraniya ends. Now you are starting to get to the point where you should be able to connect almost any sentence in the Quran. If you have mastered the Shadda, you should be able to connect any sentence in the Quran. You still may not know all the rules when it comes to the tajweed. You still may not know all the rules when it comes to ending of the ayat and other markings in the Quran, but you are at a very critical juncture, which is why there's going to be so many lessons dedicated to and exercise videos dedicated to this one concept. And I'm going to also provide a lengthy exercise supplement. Now, in that exercise supplement is going to contain all the examples that are going to be on the self-test. Finally, we're going to open the Quran and we're going to start to read or attempt to read at least one surah. I think I will do Surah Masad from start to finish. Okay, on the self-test is going to be a lengthy self-test because this is another critical juncture. There's going to be it's going to be a slightly lengthier self-test than usual. I just prepared it. I think it's 132 points. Lots of examples, lots of demonstrations you have to do in order to get the whole points. Now, all the examples will be demonstrated in the exercise supplement video and the Qaida Nuraniya videos that I will be uploading in the future. So look for those in the upcoming weeks. But this is another critical juncture, which is why I'm going to say like 8 or 9 weeks straight we're going to be dedicated to the Shadda videos, inshallah. In conclusion, what did we learn today? We learned 2 concepts. We learned about the Shadda and we learned about the madd-ul-lazim. Next few videos are going to be all about exercises for the Shadda. And the next lesson video, I don't know in how many weeks, I'm probably going to be like 7 or 8 weeks. We're going to talk about the sun letters and the moon letters, inshallah. Huroof-ul-shamsi wa huroof-ul-qamari. We will discuss those in detail. So that's it for today's video. If you like the video, please like the video below. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, leave them below. Please subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one and help me share this knowledge by sharing this channel with your friends and family and on your social media. Jazakallah khair for watching. I will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.